I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. So happy to be back this week. The guys held down the fort without me. Thank you so much for that. But let's go ahead and get rocking this week. Let's go ahead and introduce them, despite the fact we don't need to because we love them so much. Ben Duffy, the jack of all trades, who's master of them all, senior editor at Sherdog.com. How you doing, my man?
Doing well. I took today to remind myself that I mastered the art of t-shirt design. It's a shame that the Sherdog merch store closed down, but I got mine.
We're working on that.
Man, I can't believe they let that one close down.
We're working on that.
Okay. All right, good. All right. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also, my good friend, Jay Petrie. What's going on, man?
I'm looking at Mr. Duffy, and for the first time in how many weeks he hasn't worn a hat on the broadcast, I am impressed. I wish I had those luscious locks. The salt and pepper does
extra gray. It's mostly salt at this point.
the salt and pepper works though, so I'm not mad about that one bit.
Handsome
yeah. Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, it makes me feel doofy because you're wise and experienced. Anyway, speaking of experience, there was no major fight experience to be had this week. I mean, there was CFFC. There was
Cage Warriors.
I think Cage Warriors was in Rome, which had its own interesting thing, but that's not a really, all of the Italian fighters won on Cage Warriors Rome thanks to glorious matchmaking. Anyway, zero major fights from any, major promotion this weekend. That is the stat of the week, is zero, because that is a rare thing, guys. These days, with all the majors we have running, usually somebody has something going, but for the whole weekend we had no fights, and that was noteworthy in itself.
Definitely a welcome weekend off for you guys, I'm sure, and a lot of your colleagues, or I guess I could still say my colleagues. I don't know where I am at this point. But definitely begs a question, Jay and Ben. No major promotion running a show, very rare that we get a weekend like that. Why do you think that happened this weekend?
That's a really good question. I mean, I can't think of any major international type holidays that would have brought this about. I think it's just a matter of the stars kind of aligning. Maybe promotions didn't want to run the risk of their people on the mic saying the wrong thing between Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. I didn't want to walk into that fire. I have no idea.
Definitely not MMA. They don't care about stuff like that.
Nope. They do not give the slightest shit.
I mean, even international holidays, there is the tradition of the New Year's Eve show.
Sure.
We've seen events run around Christmas time. We've seen, what other international holidays are there? Is that kind of it? Because
July, he had July 4th shows.
Well, international
weekend shows.
That's international fight week, but but it's basically throwing themselves a birthday party. It's International Fight Week on America's birthday. Come celebrate with us.
So it's kind of strange. Jay, do you think this is just a pure coincidence, or is there a reason behind this?
I think it has to be. Because we Pancrase for as long as I can think, Pancrase has always run a Christmas show. That's just a thing that's happened over in Japan, and it's always been entertaining enough if you can catch it, and it's not must see, it's not dramatic, it's not championship extravaganza on Christmas. It's here you go, happy Christmas. Here's some people smacking each other around live. It's weird. I really mean this. This is strange. UFC has 42 events a year. That's pretty much the official total. That's how they have to keep that schedule. And without back-to-back day events anymore, like they used to have the Tough on Friday and Saturday pay-per-view, or the international double fight card, double day, where they'd have a show in Perth and then have a show in Tucson or something. That's not the case anymore for the UFC, and I don't know why. Bellator has also a schedule, it's not as massive, but then you factor in Rizin, you factor in KSW, even Invicta, sort of almost major, one championship. There's a PFL. There's a lot of leagues that are going on. So it truly is almost a happy accident when this happens, because there's always supposed to be something. Like, some organizations relish in the UFC taking the weekend off. Be like, yes, I don't have to worry about dealing with anything like that. I can run, like Bellator is very, very happy to have a Saturday night tentpole card when the UFC isn't running. So for there to be nothing outside of CFFC and Cage Warriors Italy, I mean, those are not major promotions, but they're noteworthy enough. For that to be the biggest show in town this whole weekend is surprising. Like, I don't even think there was an LFA, I don't think. And that, even then, I don't know. There's nothing going on that would preclude it from preclude an event from happening, to my knowledge. So it is a strange situation in my eyes.
I think it's notable to recognize that we have the major promotions have either just ran, a big card, or they're about to run a big card. We got a huge UFC event coming up in 2 weeks, I believe. 280 is right around the corner in Abu Dhabi. Bellator just had one of their big events, where they're featuring some of their top names in Long Beach just weekend before last. PFL is gearing up for the finale of their season. So these organizations, Rizin just had Floyd Mayweather out there for whatever he was doing. So they've already kind of run things, or they're revving up to run something. I think this is just weird coincidence. And when we look at Bellator in particular, they always do, like you said, Jay, they find that tentpole event to run when the UFC is off as often as possible. Maybe this time it was just a logistical issue, because they bring those tentpole events to the Los Angeles area typically, or San Jose maybe. Yeah. But say they were trying to make sure AJ McKee was fighting in the LA area, as they have in Aaron Pico on the card as well. Perhaps the forum was booked for this past weekend. Maybe they didn't think they sell enough tickets for Crypto.com Arena, formerly known as Staples Center.
I just as an aside, I don't think it's going to be Crypto.com Arena for long.
Yeah, that is an awful name.
I don't think that the money's going to keep flowing. Anyway, carry on.
And it's, and I'm sure there are a lot of blue wearing people in LA that like the crypto name for the, but that whole nother story.
That's some red wearing people that won't say it right or spell it right.
Crypto Arena or whatever. So we're not even, because that's going to totally derail us. But I think it was just an accident. Not an accident. I think it was just a coincidence. The stars lined, and I mean, let's take this on a more personal note, gentlemen. I mean, you two do a lot. You guys put out a lot of content. You are pillars of one of the most respected and storied sites in mixed martial arts. So, a weekend off, what was that like?
Busy. Well, I mean, as you're aware, having spent years working with Sherdog yourself, there's a core editorial team of 5 or 6 of us that, are the full timers. And on weeks like this, that's when we try to strategize our time off so that we're not leaving people in the lurch when there are 3 major events in a week. So, last week was Tristan Critchfield, news editor, off. This week that we're entering now, Brian Knapp, features editor, off. And they are 2 guys that they intentionally keep low profiles, I think both of them have even fewer Twitter followers than I do. But if you're watching this show, you probably read literally millions of words that they've written, because they probably account for a third of everything on Sherdog over the last 15 years. So, that's slack that Jay and I pick up on these weeks, and they do the same for us when I go have my midlife crises, guitar in hand, on the road somewhere, where Jay does whatever the hell weird shit he does.
I don't know what I do. I just wake up the next day.
Jay goes to the wine shirt store, needs time off.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Except for Tommy Bahama, not that one, because those are too expensive. And
that's probably what's happening to your eye, dude. Like your eye is like rebelling against your own shirts.
Oh, maybe the shirts are just too loud. And I'm like, no.
It's like trying to build a defensive shell over itself.
It's like coconut husk getting into your eyes.
Hey, man, Margaritaville is just a night away.
Dude, I went with my wife and son, Gabe, that lives with us, to one of our favorite Tex-Mex places yesterday, and we sat on the patio. And this patio, we're in Houston. There's like literal palm trees over the patio. But these palm trees had like the little palm fruits. They're not coconuts or dates or anything, but they're just these little seeds. And I guess they were in season. And every time the breeze blew, just these seeds would keep falling into our food. Like, basically,
they taste good.
I don't know. Like when a tree nuts in my food, I don't eat it.
You're missing out, pal. It's one of nature's true delights.
I'm telling you, my basest instincts wants to take this further. Wants to really go out.
I left it right there for you.
I mean, did you? So Ben, did you stick your tongue out? Go ahead.
I tried to lay under like 3 trees at once to see if I could just get the full palm bukkake. Yeah.
Well, thankfully his wife keeps a rolled up newspaper to swat him when that's about to happen. Stop it.
All right. So before we ruin our marriages and our future career prospects, let's move on here. So Shogun and Frankie Edgar have their quote unquote final fights announced this past week. But this is mixed martial arts. Retirements typically don't mean anything. And if that's the case, and you had to guess which one of these two gentlemen will be exiting that retirement phase, which one?
Ah, man, it's actually a really tough call, because Frankie, I feel like, is the kind of guy who would be able to get out of bed and take a fight with Uriah Faber or something, that kind of thing, where 2 years from now he can be like, yeah, I feel like fighting Ricky Simon. What the heck? Let's do it. Whereas Shogun, I mean, they're the same age. I think they're about a month apart in age, give or take. So they're both 40 years young. And as we always talk about, the age is more harmful to lower weight classes historically.
Except that Shogun is shoot a box 40. That's like a dog being 40. Like it doesn't happen. It defies nature.
Except that Shogun is 40 years old and trained at shoot a box, so his fight mileage of 41 fights and his training between all of them makes him one of the oldest fighters in the sport. Like, he makes Alexei Oleinik look like a kid that just came off the Contender Series. But at the same time, I truly believe if the two fight the last fight, win or lose, whatever, they win or they lose, if say they both lose, they'll be on 3-fight skids. That's tough, especially if they get finished against their tough opponents. Like, these are not easy fights they're taking. Ihor Potiera, he struggled out of the gate for his first big fight in his career. He's from Ukraine, and he fought. I think he won his way on from a Contender Series, and then he got knocked out by Nick Nagu, and he was kind of, he was on like WWFC and like RFP and Golden Coat and stuff like that. So it wasn't the top of the top competition, but he strung together a long win streak where he was smashing fools. And Frankie and Shogun Hua is, that's a tough thing to give him. Like, to give a guy who, he lost his last fight, but before then he had been smashing people, and Shogun's looking tired. But I still think even if Shogun gets knocked out and it's his last fight, I still think like there are more fights for him to have than if Frankie Edgar loses to Chris Gutierrez, which Chris Gutierrez is legit, by the way. Like, since he lost to Hani Barcelos, who at the time was Ben Duffy's #1 pound-for-pound fighter, he has gone on to not lose his next 7 fights. He has looked sensational. He smashed Dana Bakarai back in March with a spinning back fist. That's awesome. So Chris Gutierrez is a real tough up-and-comer for Frankie Edgar to fight. I think of the two, Shogun has the greater chance of winning, and of the two, I think he has the greater chance of coming back should they go, I'm retired. No, just kidding. Let's fight Alexander Gustafsson. So I feel like this is not Shogun Rua's last ride.
What say you, Ben?
I tend to agree with you. And for what it's worth, I actually like both of these matchups because much as I hate to say it, you can't help these guys write a storybook exit. If you give them too easy a fight, they'll decide it isn't their last fight. You know, if they gave Shogun just an Askar Mozharov type, just goofball clown that barely knew how to fight, he'd thrash his ass and be like, he'd literally in that post-fight presser be like, I want to fight for 5 more years. I think I got 10 more fights in me, you know, and I'd have to put a poll on the Sherdog front page. Does Shogun Rua have another title run in him at light heavy? You know what I mean? Like, you can't do it. So build somebody mildly promising off them and just make it somebody that's not going to just strip years off their life. You know, like, I think they're both going to walk in as pretty substantial underdogs, but they're going to have a legitimate chance to win. You know, it's not, you know, Roxanne Modafferi versus Casey O'Neill. And yeah, like I like these matchups. I think they're both going to lose. I tend to agree with Jay that there's more that Shogun could do, weird as it sounds, because he's been dilapidated for literally like 15 years now. I mean, he had one knee completely gone and one like winged like a jet engine with like, you know, like a jet plane with like a flaming engine when he came to the UFC at age 28. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. And
he won the title. Yeah. And he very possibly beat Machida twice.
I've had this rant on this show before. Like, you could cut off his career after the Forrest loss, where everyone assumed he was done as a top-level competitor, and he might still be a top 15 light heavyweight of all time, just based on what he's done since then. You could cut him off again after he tapped the strikes in the cage from John Jones, where he was done as a top-level fighter, and it's shocking what he accomplished after that. Like, the dude is just unbelievably, resilient, and reinvented himself as his physical gifts declined in a way very, very, very few fighters ever have.
So what you're saying is he needs to move up to heavyweight and fight Andrei Arlovsky.
Wow. They would both be 60 years old by the time that fight finished, because that fight would be so bad, it would just like slow down like time.
It's like the walkouts themselves would take.
Like, it'd be like walking out into a black hole. They'd start to like elongate as the gravitational field like sucked them.
Like they would walk out to the cage in bathrobes with walkers to the theme like, of Matlock.
The music would sound like a chopped and screwed remix because time would just slow down.
Dirge. Turn Armin van Buren sail into a funeral dirge.
The water bottles would be filled with applesauce. Like it would just be an absolute nightmare for that to ever happen. Hey, I think if I had to pick which one of the two would probably be more likely to come back, I would guess Frankie Edgar. You know, I don't guess that confidently, but he, you know, like Jake said, he seems like the type that would always be in shape, that like they'll always be working out. Like, I'm sure around Toms River, New Jersey, no matter how long it's been since he fought in the UFC, this guy would do like a 5-mile run every day, and you know, and be coaching wrestling somewhere or something. Like, he would be in it somehow, and be very easy for him to get pulled right back in. And he just seems so matter of fact about everything. They'd be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go ahead and take this fight.
He was UFC champ and still like part-time assistant coaching at like Rutgers.
You kind of picture like the UFC puts up a show in Newark, and he goes, yeah, I'll come back for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, Jim Miller, what you up to? All right, cool. Let's
Right, yeah, like you can see him easily moving up to 145, 155, being like, yeah, what the heck, let's do it.
It almost doesn't matter what weight class anymore, because the sport has advanced so much as he's moved down in weight. I mean, dude, Chris Gutierrez is bigger than half the people that drove Frankie out of 145. Like, he's not like quite Brian Ortega or Max Holloway big. He's big as Cub Swanson or Jeremy Stevens. Yeah. And he's a fucking bantamweight. Yeah.
I think I would much more likely. I think it would be much more likely to see Frankie come back, and I think because like Shogun, I mean, he before 30, he had injuries that would retire a lot of people. Like he had injuries that forced Bas Rutten to retire, before he was 30. Yeah. So I think whether Shogun wants to or not, his body probably just isn't going to let him do much of anything. Like he very well could just step out of bed and just knee collapse. Much less, making it through a training camp. I just don't think it's going to be physically feasible for him. Never mind, any sort of brain damage and whatnot. I think his joints just aren't going to allow it after a certain point. And I think Frankie Edgar would also be the one who's more likely to entertain some of the MMA adjacent properties like a BKFC, something like that, because it'd just, for him, it's like, oh, this would be a new challenge. This might be fun. Yeah. Tap into his street fighter roots or whatever and just decide that that's what he wants to do because it passes time. That sounds like something Frankie Edgar would do, in my opinion, at least.
Well, I don't know. I see Shogun as a BKFC type of guy over Frankie just because he loves that brawl when he gets it. But yeah, Frankie definitely didn't have the injuries that Shogun had. But you have to look at Shogun sitting back this weekend, because he's not fighting until January, so he's not, hard in training camp yet. Sitting back this weekend watching Glory, whatever number it was, watching his old buddy, Alistair Overeem, just about knock out Badr Hari. He'd be like, I smoked that guy twice. If he can still do that, I can still do that. This sport is
wouldn't you love to see him against a smallish heavyweight of roughly his same age, same against like a Gokhan Saki type? Shit.
Yeah, I'd see it. I'd watch it.
Like not Spong, not Spong.
No. We don't want to kill him.
I mean, the thing, they both though their names are so big. Where I could see a Scott Coker or somebody luring them out of retirement because they have another big name that they can pair them up against for one big check.
If they wanted the Machida fight, get Coker to get Shogun for that one-off deal and do that for a pay-per-view.
Yeah, or if you want to see Shogun Rampage again, or that could be a possibility. You could see Frankie and take your pick of the smaller guys out there that are free and open. I mean, hey, you never fought Aldo. Wouldn't it be sad if Aldo found him outside of the UFC too? Wouldn't that be horrible for him?
That'd be bad for everybody.
It's probably what's going to happen too.
Yeah, it is. They're going to box or something.
Yeah.
It's like the co-main event on some show. You're like, why are they the co-main event to, blankety blank headlining?
Yeah, I could see that happening. Ooh. I don't want it to happen, but it could.
I'm sorry to stitch back to a little side thing that Ant just threw out, and he threw it out like the blue shell in Mario Kart, and it just blew me off the road. But as soon as you brought up Bas Rutten, I haven't been able to think about anything else. It's like, what happened to your knees? Oh, I spent the prime of my career getting heel hooked in prostitute stripper boots over in Pancrase. Seriously, like it used to be like the pimp promotion. Everyone wore plastic boots up to their knees and could only slap each other. That's called a pimp. And a prostitute.
Or it's called that's the best rule set. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I had to just get that out.
Well, I have to get something out too, if you guys don't mind. We're totally veering way off course. I was thinking about older fighters. This transition doesn't make sense until it does. I was thinking about older fighters and something we've been talking about on Sherdog, privately turned publicly, is we've been running this series of all-time fighters. And, we'll do the top 10s of every weight class pretty much. And like Duffy was saying about how Shogun could cut off his Pride career and still be one of the best top 15 light heavyweights ever. And that'd probably probably. And you think about those kind of fighters. And then I got to thinking, as we're going on, he's thinking about Bas Rutten in a pimp hat, and Kane obviously slapping fools.
Actually, Ken's wearing the hat. Ken Shamrock is wearing the hat in this situation.
And Frank's the one sticking his tongue out and having a good time. Yeah. And I got to thinking about those lists, because some of those are easy. Like the Shogun top 10 light heavyweight, you could pretty much go, okay, Jones, Chuck, Vanderlei, Shogun, you could punch that together. But one that I couldn't really easily do was for the ladies. I know this is a total change of topic entirely, but one of the ones we're doing is all-time women. It's tough to be able to go 115ers or 125ers or 145ers or 155ers, so just like the all around. And it got me thinking, and I'm still to this moment not entirely sure, but Aunt Ben, think about all the ladies that have fought of all time. We're not just talking about UFC. We're talking about, Strikeforce. We're talking about Smack Girl. We're talking about Jules. We're talking about Hook and Shoot. We're talking about Bodog. We're talking about all of the Invicta, everything from start to finish. Do you guys think you could put together lists of the top female fighters that have done it?
Like pound for pound all time?
Sure.
Yeah. Like the first 4 or 5, I think, are pretty easy and obvious, and people are mostly only going to differ on the order you put them in. I mean, I have one that's probably a left field choice to a lot of people watching this show that, I'll rate higher than most others, but the rest of them, pretty obvious. I mean, you ask anyone who's been a fan of the sport, say, since before women were in the UFC, since before, what was that, 2013? Yeah. Like, they're going to say, in some order, Valentina Shevchenko, Amanda Nunes, Chris Cyborg, Ronda Rousey, throw those out there. I throw Megumi Fuji in there. There were 3 or 4 years where she was probably the best fighter in the world, man or woman, any weight, and just was unfortunate that she didn't start in the sport until she was 30 years old, and she was pushing 40 by the time there was even a promotion that could put together an appropriate weight class for her. Like she went around the world like beating up 125-pound women when she weighed like 105 soaking wet, just because that's what she had to do. I rate that very highly. If we made a similar list for the men, I'd be throwing out some old school, like, pre-weight class, no holds barred.
Like a Pele.
Yeah, like those type of guys. But once you get past that 4 or 5, that's where it gets a little cloudier. You get to your Holly Holmes, your Rose Namajunas. Like, where does Julia Budd fall in there? Like, is she the greatest one? She and Fuji the greatest ones that, never fought in the UFC or Invicta? Probably, like stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I could throw them into a more specific order than that if you like. But
well, I'm really curious because you think of fighters, and when I was chewing on this thing, I initially rated Tara LaRosa very highly. Like, we're going to skip past her as a human, her and her political affiliations. That's not part of the discussion. This is strictly career accomplishments and what you've done. And I think like I had Tara LaRosa, who, like Megumi Fuji, she fought outside of any major promotion basically for a long time, and she fought primarily at 135, sometimes at 145, sometimes at question mark weight, because of the weight classes were so thin at the time. But she also strapped together a long win streak for years. She was undefeated for years, from like 03 to 06 or something like that, which, even though the weight classes are thinner like that, does that matter as much? And would you think like somebody like that should get, who never was a major champion, should have that kind of appreciation for an all-time list over a UFC Strikeforce champion like Amisha Tate, or like Holly Holm, who knocked out the number 2 or 3 or whatever you probably have on your list?
Well, like, I mean, someone like a Tara De La Rosa she deserves to be in the conversation, but you can't put her above a Holly Holm or Misha Tate, or the people that reached the pinnacle.
Yeah.
But it is very important to recognize the history, because there was so much women's MMA that happened before the UFC got on the bandwagon. So I think of someone like a Tanya Evinger, who was by far one of the greatest female fighters active in her day. And by the time she made it to the UFC, her best days were long gone. And modern fans don't appreciate how dominant she was as an Invicta champion. So,
I mean, for a lot of them, their first experience with her was her like being
Cyborg.
made into a sack lunch for Cyborg.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. So I think the women's conversation is very interesting simply because they don't have the same amount of history on the biggest of big stages.
Exactly.
So you've really got to do a deep dive, and you really have to open your mind more to what the landscape was at that time. I think a name like Tanya Evinger, I think of Tara De La Rosa, I think of
Marlos Kunin.
Yeah, Marlos Kunin. Yeah,
Jennifer Howe.
Exactly. Those are names that have to be somewhere in, if not your top 10, in your top 15. They have to be in there if you're having a real conversation. Like as great as say like an Alexa Grasso could be, she doesn't belong in that because even if you put a modern resume up against the resume that the ladies had back then, okay, I could see where the debate lies, but at the same time, they work with what they got. Like if you like the knock on Cyborg, like, okay, the competition that wasn't there for her. Well, she destroyed everyone that was put in front of her just about. So that counts for something. She looked like she was miles and miles ahead of everyone. So that means she probably was, that sort of thing. You have to factor that in for even the people that are outside that scope of the top 5. And really broaden your horizon. So I'm very curious as to what the whole staff is going to vote on for that. Off the top of my head, I mean, yeah, the top 5 is easy. I got Nunes number 1.
Yep.
I got Cyborg 2.
Okay.
I'm probably going Ronda 3.
Okay.
Despite the head-to-head disparity there, probably Holly Holm might be 4.
Okay.
Wow, Ant pushing Val way down.
See, Holly Holm, the thing for Holly Holm for me is that, and maybe I shouldn't factor this into an MMA list, I'm thinking about her as a boxing champion as well.
Oh, okay.
Holly Holm is one of the greatest combat athletes overall the world has ever seen.
It's a good argument, though.
And that's sort of where I'm thinking there. Miesha Tate, I think, falls outside of my top 5, like just outside, maybe 6 or 7. I probably would put Joanna maybe above her, maybe or Val, then Joanna, because of the probably Val, then Joanna, then Miesha, and then that throws things into disarray because Miesha got the one over Holly Holm, but so MMA math really does not work with the women, even more so than it doesn't work with the men.
No, it's like rock, paper, scissors up in there. Yeah.
It only for me works because for Amanda over Cyborg and Amanda over Val, because those head-to-heads, those are cleaner. But yeah, it's really tough because there are, like in any times of the all-time lists, I'll have I believe I had Joanna ranked over Rose, even though Rose knocked her out and then defeated her in the second fight. So those 2 head-to-head wins, I still consider like Joanna's championship win streak to be more impressive because she defended the title 6 times in a row against, top 5 women in the division. So that's tough. But Ben, I got a big, very difficult name that actually merits it if you really dig into her win record, who she's beaten over the years. But she also has lost a lot of not quite. She's all right, but she's also lost to a lot of great women. Roxanne Modafferi has wins over Marlos Kunin, Vanessa Porto. She has wins over.
She's the one that broke Tara LaRosa's endless.
She's the one that has win over Tara LaRosa. Name. You can keep going down the list. So she has some names over Jen Howe. I think she's the only person basically to beat Jen Howe besides.
She ended Jen Howe's career. She beat her twice in a row, and Howe never fought again.
Yeah, and the names continues for Invicta names. You got Sarah D'Alelio, and you got Deanna Bennett. You got Entry Elite twice. So yeah, I mean, she lost, but at the same time, she also lost 20 times. So that's tough, right? Does that preclude
tough.
Her from
It completely does. I mean, you won't find a bigger booster of Roxanne Modafferi than me. Like, I've been a fan almost as long as I've been a fan of the sport, but no, I mean, she doesn't break my top 25. Even at her very best, she lost a lot of fights. Not all of those losses were great losses, even back in the day. I mean, she's the perfect candidate for like the Hall of fucking Awesome, because being great isn't the same as being good. being awesome isn't the same as always being great, you know. She was awesome. But no, in terms of just straight down the line accomplishments, even if I were to extend it out to like 20, I'm not getting there. I mean, like I got to 15 without getting to Marloes Kunin. Like, I'm embarrassed of myself.
Wow.
And Kunin, like, really, like, dog walked Modafferi in like their last fight closest to their primes. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like Roxanne Modafferi, as much as it's difficult to even say anything against her, because she just seems like the most wonderful person ever, and it's such a friendly fan favorite. But we have to be real about what that means, as far as what great means as far as in the cage. Like, are we going to call, I don't know, say
Kenny Florian? Yeah,
Kenny Florian, the perfect example. Kenny Florian, where does he rank on an all-time list? Well, you at your best, you didn't quite get there.
Yep, that's exactly.
So that has to be taken into account. Or a Cowboy Cerrone, or somebody of that stature, where like, they were great to watch.
She's
and they
very much to me a female Cowboy Cerrone, or like Joe Lozon type.
Okay. Yeah.
A fantastic legacy, but just not the upper echelon to where we're talking about GOAT lists. So. But I'm. This is you got me thinking, Jay. This is
It is a really fun one. If we want to like circle back next week and have our lists or something like that, I'd be okay with that. But also, there's another name to think about. I know we're way off of where we could be. Sarah Kaufman has one of the most underratedly great resumes in the sport. And she also was the inaugural Strikeforce champion back when that was the best place to be. 135 in Strikeforce, that was it. That was the queen division.
And she had the best tan in Canada.
But she also broke Roxanne Modafferi with that slam to win the title, which was wild. You got names Leslie Smith, Alexis Davis, Val Letourneau, Misha Tate, Liz Carmouche. So we don't have to have a consensus or anything, but I really enjoyed that kind of sidetracking, because there's something to go with there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
definitely. It's a perfect conversation to have on an off week.
That's right. That's right.
Any current fights to discuss. All right. Well, okay. Well, while we're talking about great females, I mean, there's one name that we hadn't mentioned, despite the fact that she holds a win over our consensus number one on
Nunes.
Yep, and that is Julianna Pena. She is really gunning for that rubber match with Amanda Nunes. Do you think she gets it?
I know what she has to do.
What she have to do?
Keep talking.
Keep
talking, because I would say that at this point, with the series at 1-1, with Nunes having definitively won the won the title back, her best chance at getting a rubber match is making Nunes feel like she needs one in order to prove something, either to herself or to the public at large. Otherwise, the woman most likely to dethrone Nunes is also named Nunes, and it's Nina Ansaroff Nunes. Like, domestic bliss and swinging off into the sunset are otherwise like her exit from the sport. Like, Nunes was talking about retirement before the first fight with Pena. She was, they had their baby. Yep. Ansaroff has not officially, but more like almost like, officially walked away from fighting entirely. Nunes, like, how badly does she need it? What's her motivation level? Especially, what's her motivation level to keep making 135? If she wants to go out with one last great hurrah, who's to say she doesn't do it at 145? So, more like Pena has to do 3 things, and oddly, keep winning fights is the least important of the 3. Stay healthy is number 1, and stay in Nunes's ear, I think is number 2, because Pena always had the talent. She was always an extremely talented fighter. The really wild thing about 2021 for Julianna Pena was it was the first time she'd fought twice in a calendar year since 2015. Like, that's almost as stunning as her winning the title. So yeah, stay healthy, stay in Nunes's ear / eyeballs, and I think it might happen. Nunes isn't going to stick around long enough for another generation of up-and-comers. She's not going to wait for Carl Hosa to win 2 more fights. Like, where's the sizzle in that? Like,
Nunes is in such a weird spot because, I mean, look at UFC's rankings. How many ranked featherweights are there? Oh, wait, there's just Amanda Nunes. That's it. You can look on the UFC.com /rankings, and you will see a photograph of Amanda Nunes with 2 belts on her shoulders and women's featherweight and the champion, and then a blank spot below her. So the last hurrah at 145 may be more reasonable, so she doesn't have to deal with the weight issue. But I mean, it's hard. I mean, I don't know if you said this specifically or not, but it's going to be hard for Amanda Nunes to get out of bed to be like, okay, let's get ready to fight. Ooh, boy, Penny Kianzad strung 4 fights in a row. Let's do this thing. Okay, Macy Chasson, do you want to fight at 135, 145, 140? Okay, cool. There's just not the X factor. I don't know if Pena can get an automatic rematch to coming off of that loss. I mean, did she win a round? I don't recall if Pena won a round.
I didn't feel as though she did.
I feel like it was 50-45 all day. And I wrote the play-by-play for the darn thing, but I can't remember. I just remember a one-sided. The point was, I don't remember thinking, boy, I'd sure love to see the rubber match of this. So I went, okay, that's what's supposed to happen. Like, you remember when Chuck fought Randy the second time, and Chuck absolutely posterized Randy and went, that's what's going to happen every time. Yep. And then they fought again, and you're like, yeah, there it is, that same kind of thing. That's what I feel when I look at Pena Nunes 3. I just can't see her Nunes falling short and doing whatever happened in the first fight to lose and get dropped and get choked out in that fashion. But I feel like Pena's got to win some. And I think the fighter she should beat to get that possible shine is a fight that I'm actually really curious about. And I actually wish we had seen it, but we never could see it. Is Pena versus Holly Holm. Because Holly Holm's still sticking around, gatekeeping, kicking everybody out of the top 5.
In 2 weight divisions.
And in 2 weight classes. Because I feel like Pena's going to do something spectacular to get another shot at her. And I just feel like by the time she does that, Nunes is going to be like, yeah, I'm 36. I'm good. Thank you. We did our thing. I'm the best ever.
Jay, I like what you're thinking, but I think you might even be thinking too lofty for Pena. I say Pena just needs one to be right back in, and we're not even talking about the second Nunes fight, because the image of her, finishing Nunes in that first fight is still just that much more dramatic and easy to put on a commercial and easy to sell. And Julianna Pena just talks enough trash and can drum up some interest that otherwise wouldn't be there for like a Penny Kianzad or Macy Chasson or something. I mean, I think Pena could fight, just briefly looking at the rankings right here, if she fought like, I don't know, Kunitskaya or something like that, that would be good enough. Holly Holm, I think, obviously that would be fantastic. That would for sure.
Holly Holm would beat Pena.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's very, very, very risky. And then you run the risk of, okay, now you're gonna put Holly Holm in front of Nunes.
We can't make that fight again.
Yeah, does Nunes get out of bed for that one? Probably not. So I think
she might knock her out without getting out of bed.
Unless it's at 145.
Yeah, you. So I say you give Pena someone that she can beat, and she can get on the mic and say something crazy, and she could get in the press conference and say something else crazy, and she could be in the media and say something else crazy, and maybe you have enough to put together for a commercial. Because all of those the options of Pena stirring up things just sounds so much more appealing from a box office standpoint than anyone else on the list for the rankings.
It's really funny you say that, and now that I'm thinking about it, you mentioned Kunitskaya. That was a great name, because I look at Pena. She's ranked number 1 under the champion at 135. Ketlen Vieira probably wins a clear-cut decision over her. Holly Holm would probably beat her, or Renee Aldana would, if she makes 135 again, would box her up. Raquel Pennington, that'd be a really ugly fight that it'd be like a split decision that nobody really wants to.
And then we've seen
have we seen
Pennington
fight Pennington? No.
We've seen Pennington and Nunes. And
yeah, and we don't want to see that finish was you don't need to ever see that kind of fight again. And then you really going down the list, and I look at that. It's so funny, because I would favor most of the women ranked below her in Julianna Pena to beat her. Ketlen Vieira, Holly Holm, Irene Aldana, probably I would favor her. She could probably get past Pennington, but it would be tough. Kunitskaya, depends on if she gets the fight down. Penny Kianzad, probably. Macy Chiasson, that's a physically big test to handle. And who knows if Chiasson's making 135 again. Carol Hossa, yeah, okay, fine. And then what? Tate? So that is that Tate coached Pena, right? On the tough season.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, because they were buddies from Seattle. Like,
so that fight's not happening. So there you go. You pretty much cleaned out the division in terms of fights that she could win. That's the anti-cleaning out the division.
Yeah, I really think that's her best bet. And even then, it's still probably not that appealing. But this is infinitely more appealing than any of the prior names, unless Vieira goes out there and just does just some sort of ungodly Neo from the Matrix sort of finish on her next fight.
Which that's not been Ketlen Vieira's thing.
No,
like she's been
all.
Solid but unspectacular.
Right. Yeah, she'd have to really surprise us and go far out of character in order to get enough sizzle for that to be a thing. And then for Nunes, you run the risk of like, say, remember when Daniel Cormier won the heavyweight belt, and he said, "Hey, I'm not getting out of bed for some of these new guys," and he starts rattling off names of fights that would have been interesting. He's like, "Man, these young dudes, I ain't got time for that. Mm-hmm. I want this guy, and that's it." And he held out for Brock Lesnar.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's what Nunes is what we're pushing up against when you start talking about Carol Hossa or something like that.
Yeah.
Coming up in the ranks. Like that's what we're talking about. So yeah, this is probably it for Nunes as far as really interesting challenges. Unless all of a sudden the Kayla Harrison just rips up her PFL contract and just is like, you know what, Dana, I'm coming home. Like that's the only way that happens. So she'd be stuck in court longer than Eddie was when he tried to leave Bellator. Yeah, if she says I'd rather instead of winning $1 million in this easy tournament, you know what, give me 10-10. I want Nunes. But if you think about it, Kayla has a new challenge in front of her, right? Is that a new newsworthy piece that happened?
Yeah, actually newsworthy.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. Okay. Aspen Ladd, who just all sorts of issues on the scale that we've talked about at length on this program. She is now a member of the PFL roster. She was dropped by the UFC, and then a couple days later, if that PFL picked her up, and she will be in the featherweight tournament, or she's fighting a featherweight super fight, right? Before it sounds like they're doing a featherweight tournament. They're doing a featherweight season. She is signed up for featherweight, not lightweight. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, is this the right move for Aspen Ladd? Yes, it is. If I don't think it is, then I don't believe in Aspen Ladd as a prospect, because right now she is a former red hot prospect who is still in her 20s and has just had a rash
well, not even a rash, an era of chronic weight problems and lately kind of flat, listless performances. If I believe in her as still a potential contender at any weight class, a potential champion at any weight class, then the best possible prescription for her is a steady diet of being in fight camp. And that is what a PFL season will do for her. She's going to fight, what, 4 times in 6 months? And that's, you know, at least 4 times in 6 months if she makes it into the playoffs and the finals. That is what she needs. Stay near your target weight. Have a goal like X'd out on that calendar 6 or 8 weeks down the road for most of a year. That sounds like exactly what she needs. If she's going to have kind of a mid-career reinvention, salvage the tarnished and dented shine of, you know, one of these future of the sport type prospects, that's what she needs. I think PFL is the perfect thing for her. $1 million in the account doesn't sound bad either.
Yeah. Jay, I mean, obviously the question that's on everyone's mind as soon as Aspen Ladd came over to PFL, as is the case whenever the PFL brings a woman that's had more than 2 fights into their roster, like, does she fight Kayla Harrison? So, Jay, with that in mind, can Aspen Ladd make 155?
I don't. That's a tough. You know, I don't actually. I'm going to flip that question on its head, even though I appreciate it very much. I don't think that there will be a 155 tournament next year. I don't know if it's already been confirmed and I'm mistaken, then I'm okay with that. But from what I gathered from the information I've seen and heard, there will be only a women's 145 tournament this coming year, which means that's where Kayla Harrison will live and feast and swim.
She's not just the implied punishment for missing weight. That's how they're going to keep Ladd on track. It's like Kayla Harrison is gonna Ippon Soinage you, like, you know.
it sounds like that is going to be the case, and we know Kayla Harrison can make 145. She did it in her one-off fight with Invicta.
She did it once 4 years ago. It was before COVID.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
She did it before her 30th birthday. She now 30. Like, dude, I'm not dead sure she can.
I don't know.
We'll see.
I think it would have to be, because you can't have a women's 145 and 155 tournament. There's just the talent, because you would take all of your 135ers and 125ers and move to 145 instead of 155. Sarah Kaufman can come back and run this train if she decided to come out of retirement. She's not that old, and it's Ben might be onto something here. Ben might be on to the structure and regiment of a year, whatever, of a very narrow, specific schedule you have to adhere to. But then I think of Larissa Pacheco, who
She-Hulk Larissa Pacheco?
Huh?
You mean She-Hulk Larissa Pacheco?
Oh yeah, She-Hulk Larissa Pacheco in the 2021 season. Yeah, last year's season. Missed weight and was kicked out of the tournament. So, and for the finals, she was in the final, having crushed her way through the tournament and couldn't keep her composure and what have you to make weight and be able to fight for $1 million. Now, can Aspen Ladd push through that and do it? I'd like to see it. 145 is better. I think that's better. If it were a bantamweight tournament, no chance in no possible way. But at 145, okay, I'll give Aspen Ladd a shot. And I'm going to also say my piece one more time. Larissa Pacheco is going to knock out Kayla Harrison in November, so it's all going to be moot when that happens.
All right. The man has spoken. So fellas, I think it's about time to pivot toward the greatest segment in media history. And that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. Ben, I'll begin with you. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I got a new one hot off the rumor mill presses that came in while we've been talking, because I had something I was going to talk about when we started the show, and 45 minutes later, I have something different.
You have a backup in mind?
It is not officially confirmed, but Alex Volkanovski is claiming that he is contracted by the UFC to be the official backup man for Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira.
Ooh.
He's going to be there. He's going to be on weight at 155. And he says he is doing this as a prelude to a potential title shot, even if he's not needed as the backup man.
Wow.
Speaking as somebody who really loves the idea of fighters cleaning out their own division and building their legacy that way before trying to, jump out of their lane in either direction, I love this. Just my brain just instantly starts percolating with all the possibilities. Like, is it an immediate title shot? Great. If not, if they want him to fight one top 5 guy before he goes on, do I want to see him against the winner of Chandler versus Poirier? Yes, I fucking do. Like, just like the possibilities just like are blowing my headphones off right now, because I know for a fact that Michael Chandler can get knocked out by a jacked 5'6" man. I done seen it happen. Like, I love this. Yeah.
Good Lord. I wish that happened before we started recording. Because
we would have been talking about nothing but that for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, seriously.
Which is fine. I mean, like, I'm just looking at the rankings at lightweight. Like, even if he doesn't fight someone in the top 5, him and RDA, yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Dariush, yes, please.
Think of all the ground fund we did. Yeah, man, there's a lot of good stuff to be had from this. But what I like most, and I don't know if it's the reason why Duffy likes it the most, this is a test cut. He already knows, because there was a brief bit of concern. Charles Oliveira had not arrived to Abu Dhabi yet. And, you will like to get there a couple weeks early to get acclimated, because Abu Dhabi is quite different from most locales you've ever attended in your life. Just hint, hint. And he wasn't there. And Makhachev was like, he's not here yet. Let's get ready. Something could go down. Well, he's here. He's in Abu Dhabi now. Oliveira has arrived. So for all intents, the fight's still going to be just fine. And Volkanovski knows this. And this is a good test cut to see high stakes. I have to make 155. It isn't I'm making lightweight. I'm making lightweight championship weight, and I'm going to be ready to compete and also be ready to be mentally prepared to fight for the title. This is the best drill you could possibly have for this kind of scenario, other than fighting a top guy in the division.
Is there a fighter in the sport that you would feel more confident in thriving and flourishing and stepping up to the occasion than Alexander Volkanovski?
Dude,
just one of the smartest, best prepared, most cerebral professional guys in the game.
I think he is moving up the most cerebral list. Yeah.
Yeah, and even with the thing about a test cut, like, how many times has a guy like an Israel Adesanya, for instance, gone up in weight, and then they feel the power and the strength of someone bigger than me, and they're standing next to this person in this bigger weight class, and like, oh, this is why they're weight classes, and just seeing that difference. Volkanovski will at least have a bit of a taste of that. Like, he'll step off that scale and see 2 guys that he could be fighting after they step off the scale, and like, okay, this is where I stack up. This is what my body feels like.
Yes.
This is the proper way to eat and the proper way to train, because guaranteed, if he doesn't make it into the cage to replace one of these 2 gentlemen, he's going to take advantage of the fact that his body is at 155 pounds, and he's going to hit the mitts. He's going to do some sparring. He's going to do some grappling drills, and just get a feel for what it's like to move around like that, and really feel, okay, this is what it feels like to fight as a lightweight. And that knowledge right there will be invaluable preparing for a true lightweight fight. So,
and I like this better than Max Holloway just going, yeah, I'll go up and I'll fight Justin Poirier, which is for his first 155 thing. I like that way better than a short notice Volkanovski versus Mateusz Gamrot fight. Just, the sea legs thing. I like this as the, let's see how we feel just on a day-to-day basis. And because he's also training. Like, this is a guy who's not just going to be making weight and do it. He's going to be training like he will be fighting that Saturday. So he'll be able to have the fight week training camp without having to worry about, in case things went wrong, now I have to stand across the cage from Justin Gaethje, and I'm not 100%. I love this.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. And we're, I'm with you, Ben. Like I'm always for a fighter cleaning out their division and staying where they belong weight class wise. But yeah, sign me up for this.
Yeah, and he's 34 and he's already on the rematch tour. Yeah. He just fought Max Holloway for a third time and beat him for a third time specifically because of a lack of other options.
Yes.
So he's the perfect guy to make this jump.
Yep.
And if anybody is kind of built for this, again, it seems paradoxical to say about such a short, stocky fighter, even for featherweight, but we're talking about a guy who his primary training partners are Dan Hooker and Brad Riddell. We're talking about a guy who's been the shorter fighter permanently since the beginning of his career. I don't think he'll be that daunted by it. No. I think it'll be different than someone who's used to being the bigger fighter all of a sudden not being.
Yep. Definitely good point there. And man, I wish the show started off with that.
Yeah, I like that.
It's all good. All good.
I like that.
All right, Jake, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I wish I had such a glorious segment, but I'm just going to tell a fun story that I know Ben Duffy knows in its entirety, and I know that Ant, you have probably heard some of it at least, and the audience may or may not have, so I will share the delightful tale of the UFC middleweight Armen Petrosyan. Armen Petrosyan, Russian fighting out of Armenian fighting out of Russia, represents both countries, represented by Hay Sport management team while training out of Russia, which that's a whole... Anyway, before he joined the UFC or Contender Series, he fought in Russia on AMC Fight Nights, which is one of the biggest promotions along with Absolute Championship, ACB, ACA, what it is now. And he won the title, and then he lost the title defense in his next fight. So he dropped to 4-1, and he was a big test. If he had won that fight, he would have been either AMC signs him to a 10-year deal and keeps him as a ridiculously lucrative champion, or he comes over to the UFC immediately. Like, that's the talent that he had. He lost the fight, and things were a bit tough for him. So he wanted to be able to make waves and didn't have the Champions Clause to hold him out. Now, he lost the first round knockout, so he was kind of struggling, and he wasn't, looking that good. So he decided... I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what to do. And his management team decided, let's get you a fight. Let's get you any fight that happens. Let's just get somebody to fight you. We'll get your confidence back. You'll get in the cage. You'll get your rhythm and get your groove. And so they found this 1-0 kid named Alexander Zemyalkov out of Russia. And they entered him very, very, very quietly into this organization in Russia called Coliseum MMA, which is famous for festival weekends. Like, they'll put on 60, 70. There is a 98 fight event that I have seen the 98 fights that they put on all day. And they just go, it is a conveyor belt of good, knockout, okay, out of here, go. It is just, there are words, and I will not go into them. Well, he smushed this guy.
Fucking garbage.
He smushed this Zemyalkov guy in a very suspect fight where he hit him with a body kick. The body kick hit the arm. The guy bent over, backed up against the cage. Petrosyan knees him in the shoulder. The guy lowers himself gingerly to the bed. Not like, ow, I'm down. Not like, oh, I've been dropped. Just kind of lowers himself down. And then Petrosyan does this 14 times. The actual distance of the fist to the face is this. I'm not making an obscene gesture. This is the distance of the face to the fist. Referee calls a fight. That's it. That's the thing. You have the video. We have the video now. But Fight Finder didn't have the video, didn't have the information, didn't have anything about this fight prior to this situation. And there were rumors that this fight actually was a ruse. It was fake. It was silly. It was just something that they wrote up to be able to boost him onto the Contender Series. Oh, he got a big, quick knockout. So he's back on track. He's good to go. Well, the Fight Finder team actually spoke to the Coliseum organization. Like, we've never heard of this guy. So that's that. No fight, no social media, no thought. Like, this is a guy in Petrosyan who is very active on like Instagram, and he'll post training, he'll post stuff, he'll post all of his fights. and there was a lull in that, and there was a gap in his fights information. There was a gap in Hay Sport management that didn't have anything about this fight. They write about like, oh my gosh, he won the gold medal in a regional grappling tournament. Hooray for Armen Petrosyan. That kind of post. Nothing about him smoking a guy in 15 seconds. As it turns out, as the Fight Finder team found out, the Hay Sport management team in cahoots with Coliseum actually decided we will hide his fight because Armen Petrosyan allegedly was embarrassed to be taking this fight in this organization against this low-level fighter who basically didn't fight. And he kind of, you know, they're I'll leave it to the people who've seen the fight to make up their own mind. Embarrassed about this fight, so they proceeded to have a campaign of completely burying anything of this fight. The video that we now saw was unlisted and therefore unable to be viewed by a person. You can't search it, you can't find it. It doesn't exist unless you have the specific direct link to that video. That, you know, YouTube, you know how these things work. You can't accidentally do this. It wasn't an accident. This was an intentional obfuscation to hide this fight because he was apparently embarrassed by it. They hid it so well, Fight Finder couldn't find it. And Fight Finder guys, the staff members, the men and women I work with are damn good at their job. So if they couldn't find it, oh, it's because you actually withheld it and you made sure nobody could find it. Because if you see this fight, I have made
pizza dough more violently than that fight.
I have seen worse playground fights, is what I was going to say. Yeah, it is not good. But it's a fight. And it happened. And it's a fight. We Fight Finder are not going to be like, well, that doesn't look good. We're not going to, no, we can't play that game. We can't, because, you know, look at, in the United States, look at Explode Fight Series. Remember that famous video where Elimelech McFarland kicked that soccer mom and destroyed her in a couple of seconds? Well, that's a real fight. Yeah. So who are we to decide what's a real fight or not? Like, we can look at that fight and go, I know what you did, sir. We know what happened here. Like, this is a guy who, I am not exaggerating. The guy on the ground who lost the fight got up smiling. He got up smiling. And he rubbed the side of his belly that was not kicked. Like he did the ooh, he got me good. And he rubbed the wrong side of his body that had been struck. Like, you know exactly what the hell happened here. So Armen Petrosyan, he is 7-2. Watch that fight.
It's like that episode of Beavis and Butthead where they decide to like go to the personal injury lawyer and pretend to have gotten in a car accident.
I am sorry.
My leg. I mean, my neck.
I wish I could exaggerate any of this, but it is just too special. The conversations and the whole everything that went into it was just magical. I'm not surprised.
Dude, I mean, I kind of helmed the Fight Finder for a while before you took over. It's the hardest I've ever seen a winning fighter and their team work to cover up a result.
Win. Yeah, knockout win.
That's the crazy thing. Like, we're used to losing fighters trying to hide their shit. I mean, we just had the season of Askar Mozarov a couple.
Yeah.
Where like they literally shoveled a dozen, losses under the rug. This is the hardest I've ever seen a winning fighter go to hide one of their fights.
And we've seen fighters fight so-called tomato cans, and we've seen that happen all the time.
Dude,
so what? Go ahead.
Khabib Nurmagomedov had fights like that right before he got to the UFC.
Yes, he fought
fighting like 0-0 dudes.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are plenty of fighters that made it to the UFC off of fighting guys that were 0-11 and stuff like that. That's not uncommon at all.
Giga Chikadze, he fought guys that had a combined record of like 3-46 before he made it to the Contender Series.
I mean, I think Coliseum probably hid that video so like Aspera FC didn't start like trying to poach their talent.
So all of that to say, this instance, you just don't hide your fights. Don't be
Don't run away from your feelings. It's okay to be embarrassed.
It's a fight. It's a fight, and just let it be. Don't just what is this nonsense? I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyways, and What are you not surprised about this week, or what are you actually surprised about this week?
I'm surprised, but not at the same time. For good and bad reason here. If you were looking forward to BKFC this weekend, the 15th, they got an event coming up. Melvin Guillard, a familiar name to the MMA world, scheduled to fight. And I'm going to screw the pronunciation of this man's name up.
But it doesn't matter anymore.
Evgeny Kurdanov, because it doesn't matter. The Colorado Commission has made sure Guillard will not be competing. He has not been issued a license, citing safety reasons. Melvin Guillard, since leaving the UFC, has had a very, very, very rough go of it when it comes to just pure results in combat. So we've had his WSOF debut was his fight after leaving the UFC against Jay-Z Cavalcante, I believe. He won that one by knockout. And he went on a horrific losing streak afterward. That losing streak was snapped by his BKFC debut, where he won by knockout. And since then, he's done nothing but get knocked unconscious. So it's good that Melvin Guillard is being forced to sit down. I think since the BKFC win, which was actually preceded by, I believe, 7 losses in a row. And in MMA,
to people like Chidi and Jokawani and Israel Adesanya, dude is wearing a spare tire and fighting at like 190 pounds.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty sad. And since I think he was last seen in BKFC getting knocked out by Joe Riggs in the first round.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he hasn't lasted beyond in the last couple of years. The longest he's been in has been what, a minute or less than a minute.
He had like one decision in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he broke his hand against Isaac Valley Flag.
Yep.
In the second or third round in a BKFC fight, and that's it. That's the most success he's had is a broken hand in the last round. And other than that, he's been getting floored. So, yeah, good for the Colorado Commission to put a stop to this. Fighters need to be protected from themselves sometimes.
It is the second time this year that a commission has shut down Melvin. Melvin was trying to fight in Florida at a BKFC fight card, and they went,
dude.
Yeah, and if Florida shuts you down,
thank you.
If Florida shuts you down, you really need to sit down somewhere. So, good Lord. Well, thankfully, we will not be seeing him endanger himself any further this coming weekend.
I mean, if the nanny state is stepping up to the plate, someone got to stop him from calling himself the young assassin because he's 39 and he ain't won since he was like 34. So,
shout out to Tony Cummings in Colorado. That was it wasn't, a bold call, but it was a good call.
And
it was the right call.
Julie, head of the Association of Boxing Commissions, was sounded out on both of these. And it's good that he's kind of in the loop because it means there's likely to be reciprocity and he's not going to be able to get cleared anywhere licensed. So,
yeah. So that's good news. All right, fellas. Well, the UFC is back in action. Alexa Grasso and Vivian Araujo are scheduled to compete at the Apex Center. And as far as I know, Mark Zuckerberg has not rented out the venue. So
you can buy tickets.
Yeah, you can actually be there. This is a thing that you can see with your own eyes if you're so inclined. Let's kind of cut to the chase here. I mean, this is definitely not the most star-studded card as we have come to expect for these Apex Center events that just become rank and file UFC events every weekend. Other than the homie Mike Jackson fighting in the curtain jerker for the evening, is there anything else that you're looking forward to on this card?
Please.
I mean, along with Mike Jackson, who, friend of the show, guy I consider a friend, Leomano Martinez, another Houston guy, kind of puttering along. He's in the UFC. He's had a couple of exciting fights. He's 1-1. I always root for him to do well. He's taking on Brandon Davis, pretty far up the undercard. Always exciting stuff. He is a guy who's not a complete product as an MMA fighter, but he is a guy with rare knockout power for bantamweight. And someone like that is, going to get every possible chance to succeed in the UFC. So I do look forward to seeing Mana do his thing after I believe his first full camp at Glory MMA and Fitness after the death of Saul Solis. So, yeah.
I can't figure out, guys, why the UFC didn't air this show and then take the following weekend off so they could have aired this fight card last Saturday and then taken the Saturday off so they could have the whole time to get people excited about 280 and have the pay-per-view draw and the whole drama about Charles and Islam and the build up there and bringing Khabib, bringing everybody. You could have easily made this a mega thing, but instead you take the week off so people can stew about Alexa Grasso versus Vivi Arusho.
They wanted to see how many opponents Joe Anderson Brito could go through in a week.
That's about a baker's dozen, Bob. Like I look at this fight card and I see names I like. Askarov, Brandon Royval is going to be about, I don't know, a round and a half of madness, and I'm fine with that. But I, for one, am looking forward to the return appearance of absolute pound for pound #1 world destroyer Alonzo Menafield after his crushing face rearranging finish over our best friend Oscar Mozharov is fighting Misha Cirkunov, an all-action guy that doesn't really know how to get into a bad fight. He's doing well when all of his wins and all of his losses basically are by finish. And I'm looking forward to probably about 4 minutes of, wow, that was fun. And then we go on and have fun with that. So I think that
a fight that ends either in a Japanese necktie or a coma.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or probably both. It's going to be fun. And what are you thinking? What's sexy on your fight card? Is Cub Swanson come back really ringing your bell?
Well, most of Cub Swanson coming back. Cub Swanson coming back minus 10 pounds.
Yeah. See, that's the one that I was thinking of. Because he's not getting an easy out this time.
No.
He never really gets an easy out, and Cub Swanson grossly outperforms what he's supposed to do in a lot of these fights. So that would be the one to watch for me. That's the one that's like, okay, something interesting is very, very likely to happen there. And 10 pounds lighter, man. I want to see what he looks like.
I forgot about that, guys.
Yeah.
So this is his bantamweight debut?
Yeah. So that's a big deal to me. That's going to be some action. So I'm looking forward to that. But other than that, this is, like I said, rank and file, man. It's not like this is really jumping off the page at me and saying, hey, you need to watch this live. This is probably another one that I'm going to catch up on before we record next week.
I know we're already all over time, but I have one question for you guys. Which, in terms of like mattering for a title shot, and being the big fight on the card and the next one, Ben likes to ask, who's the closest to a title shot in his preview shows? Who's closest? Is it Alexa Grasso, Vivi Arusho, or is it Askarov, Brandon Royval?
It's easily Grasso.
Yeah.
If Grasso wins, she's got a title shot. She's 3-0 at flyweight.
Yep.
She is everything the UFC wants. She's Mexican. She is largely a homegrown talent. I mean, my complaint was that they plucked her too early from Invicta and she wasn't ready. Like, she has grown up in the UFC spotlight. Mm-hmm. She is, subjectively marketable. I'll just, say that as blandly as I can. She's it. Dude, Askarov and Royval is an amazing fight, but it's more of the difference in divisions. The winner of that fight is probably 2 more wins away from a title shot, and that's even assuming that the best of 15 series between Figueiredo and Moreno is over by then. Like, they're just gonna have Figueiredo Moreno FC and go like start their own promotion where they just fight every weekend. And I'm here for that, and I love the fights, but it is putting that division on hold. So I think they actually got the order right as far as those two go.
Yeah,
those two fights.
Agreed. All right, gentlemen. Well, I think that'll do it for this edition of the Living Death Show. Big shout out to Ben and Jay, as every week, holding it down. And of course, you can check out their work on Sherdog.com for all your fight week updates. You can follow some Twitter handles you see posted below. Remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.